Welcome into the DNVR Rockies Podcast, brought to you by Strava Craft Coffee. Strava CBD coffee is infused with CBD and CBG, can be delivered to your doorstep every 2, 4, 6, or 8 weeks, whatever you need. And you're not going to get those coffee jitters if you want multiple cups throughout your day. Now you get 25% off your first purchase with code DNVR25 at StravaCraftCoffee.com. I'm your host, Patrick Lyons, and joining me today is the original Colorado kid, the native of Denver, who pitched for the Colorado Rockies back in 1993. We'll break down the whole career and all that good stuff. He's on 1310 KFKA. He's got some great articles. We'll touch on that today. He's also co-host with our buddy Manny Randawa of the Park Adjusted Rockies Podcast. It's Mark Knudson. What's going on, Mark?
A little of everything, right? It's wintertime in Colorado. Can't get ready for baseball fast enough. Get rid of this snow.
Yeah, we should be seeing pitchers and catchers reporting soon, and usually that really makes you feel like springtime. Yeah. But we may have to wait until March 1st when the minor leaguers report.
Yeah, that's likely to happen, and I still maintain that they won't miss any regular season baseball games. They'll get this settled. They'll have to. There's too much at stake, and 3 to 4 weeks of spring training, something like that. So yeah, it's ugly, but again, if they don't miss any baseball games, was it really a lockout? We'll find out. Really a work stoppage, I should say, if they don't miss any games. So hopefully they get this fixed.
That's a good point. Did you feel a little bit better? Really, the question about Rob Manfred's press conference on Thursday is he doing a bad job or an awful job? I think maybe that could be the question to put out there for you.
Rob Manfred is self-described as a transactional attorney. People skills are not his best thing. He's not good in front of a camera. He's not. I argued with people after Bud Selig retired. Bud Selig signed my checks for a long time. And I argued at the time he was the best commissioner baseball ever had. Oh, steroids. And he did, the game grew exponentially under Bud Selig. And Bud was a fan first and a businessman second. And he really, really fought hard to do what he thought was in the best interest of baseball. And on the other side, on our union, the players, we had attorneys. We were all lawyered up. And we won most of the battles because we were all lawyered up. The owners saw that, so the next commissioner became the opposite of Bud Selig. He became all lawyered up. Players, on the other hand, went back to a former player. So now you've got Tony Clark and the Players Association trying to defend the best interest of the game, trying to get rid of tanking, trying to get rid of service time manipulation, trying to make sure that every team in baseball is trying to win games. And you've got as Jeff Goldblum said in Jurassic Park, the blood-sucking attorneys on the other side trying to squeeze every dime they can out of this. And, they don't care about competitive balance. They really don't care about everybody winning. These teams are making a profit before they ever put one single fanny in a seat. And for Dick Monfort to come out and, I consider Dick Monfort a friend. I think as a businessman, he's done a tremendous job here. As Manny pointed out a couple of times, the only thing the Rockies don't do well is win on the field. They do everything else perfectly. They're a great franchise in every other way. But he put his foot in his mouth when he said that not we're all not all making money. Some teams are losing. That's just blatantly not true. And what Rob Manfred said yesterday is blatantly not true. And nobody's buying it. It's just not.
Yeah, you can make more money investing in the stock market.
That's nonsense.
Than owning these clubs. Maury Brown actually, I believe he writes for Forbes. He had an article that came out late in the day on Thursday, kind of breaking down the most recent sales and if you had invested that money in the stock market, what would have happened? And it's not really close. And so I don't know if you're fudging the numbers or putting your thumb on the scale. And no one really believes that either, too. No. I think that was one of the most obvious things. Even if you're not a hardcore baseball fan, you can just listen to the commissioner talking about owners of professional sports teams who are billionaires themselves. Mm-hmm. And that property is $1 billion property, saying, hey, average Joe, you can make more money doing that than owning a team.
Crying poor is the absolute wrong way to go about a negotiation in this situation. They're not going to win any kind of public support by crying poor. And the players aren't crying poor. What the players are trying to do, and it's a byproduct of what happened back in the 80s when owners were found guilty of collusion, and they were artificially trying to suppress salaries. They got together and did that, and they lost 3 court cases, and a lot of players got paid a lot of money in retrospect. This time, the owners have data. They have all the analytics. They have all this data on their side that can prove to anybody who wants to look that players' performance dips at age 30. I mean, you don't have to look any further than Albert Pujols to see that. He got this mega contract, never performed at that level after age 30. That's common. In the era where performance-enhancing substances have been taken out of baseball, or almost all out of baseball, players' performances are dipping after age 30. That's typical and normal. So the owners are like, well, we're not going to pay those salaries anymore, and they shouldn't have to. On the flip side, the players say, okay, well, if that's the case, then pay them earlier. Pay them when they're in their prime years and their earlier years. The owners don't want to do that either. So that's where the rub is right now. That and the whole bit of allowing teams to just shut it down and not try for a couple of years, basically tank to try to get higher draft picks or save it up for. It worked for the Astros. We know it works when it's done properly. It's still not good for the game, especially when teams like the Pirates seem to be doing it in perpetuity.
They certainly have. And to your point about statistics, one of the things that's been floated in these discussions is this idea that those young players, hey, we'll pay the young players, but we'll do it using something like wins above replacement, and we'll use these formulas. And I think a lot of people have already come out and started saying like, no, this sets a bad precedent. And I think it allows teams and front offices to manipulate the statistics in a certain way by not setting up those players for success in a lot of different ways. And you can still fudge the numbers. So, hey, we'll pay the rookie of the year a lot more money. So look, you're getting that. But if you're keeping down the top 100 prospects, they won't have a chance to even win that award.
Absolutely. And this goes back when in 1990 negotiations, the owners came forward to us with this idea. They called it PFP, which in baseball parlance is pitcher's fielding practice. In their terms, it was pay for performance. And they wanted a statistical-based salary structure. And our union just utterly laughed at the whole notion. I mean, it was a ridiculous idea because you're asking guys to be individuals. It's like fantasy league. And when the whole purpose is to win baseball games, and sometimes a guy has to hit a ball to the right side to move a runner up and give himself up. Or, I read one guy on Twitter told me that they did that in winter ball, and he had a player got thrown out the plate, and the guy who hit him was mad because he cost him an RBI and started an altercation in the dugout. You didn't run hard enough. You cost me an RBI. It cost me money. I mean, that is the last thing baseball needs, is to pay people based on their statistics, because we're forcing individuality and we're making the name on the back more important than the name on the front, and that will ruin the sport.
It's funny. I actually spoke with someone recently about one of the ideas that Nike has is a way to put the player's name on the front of the shirt and the team name on the back. And so we'll see if something crazy like that happens. Awful.
That's an awful concept. And it's why I don't play fantasy sports, because that's not what I like to see. I'm root for teams, not individuals. And you pull for people to do well and all that, but you're a fan of the team. And the more we fragment that, the worse things are going to get.
Fan of the laundry, as Jerry Seinfeld loves to say.
Yep.
Going back to your former employer there, Mr. Alan H. Selig, Bud Selig, he does get some criticism. I think over time, I think people are starting to realize that he made the best of a bad situation, and that best was really good. It wasn't like, he did the best he could. He had, again, this work stoppage in 94, 95, and people said, I'm never going back. I've had family members. I come from a baseball family, and they said, I'm not going back. And a lot of them, stayed away for a very long period of time. And as much of a black mark it is on the game about PEDs and everything that happened, he sustained baseball. He kept it alive. And we're getting up to a point right now with some of the things that are happening, particularly with this lockout and the things that the commissioner is doing right now, that we're seeing less and less people get into the sport of baseball. And we're seeing the average age of fans getting older and older. And so there is this fear that we're going in the wrong direction. Maybe profit margins are better for owners, but is the game thriving under him? Certainly you can't say that's true when compared to what Bud Selig was able to do.
Obviously, Bud, the times were different, and Bud was a season ticket holder for the Seattle when the Seattle Pilots moved. He was a season ticket holder for the Milwaukee Braves, and when the Seattle Pilots came up for sale, he bought him and brought him to Milwaukee. I mean, he was a fan first. He wanted to do what was best for the game. He loved the game, and I talked with him a lot of times in the locker room about games. He was very much interested in that, more so than the finances. Obviously, I've always said, if you do really well, you focus, you're passionate on what you do well, the returns come on their own. Robin Yount and Paul Mauter, two Hall of Fame teammates of mine, weren't at all worried about their own statistics. They were worried about doing what they could do to help the team win. And guess what? Their statistics took care of themselves. So I think that kind of outlook really helps things. And now if you're trying to squeeze every penny out, that is going to change the product on the field. And the product on the field is not going to be as good. And I think that's why we're turning off fans. I don't think it's a pace of play issue. I really don't. In fact, I can promise you, based on what Tony Clark told a group of us at the All-Star, when he was here for the All-Star break, you're not going to hear much about pace of play anymore, because the sports betting industry doesn't care about shortening length of games, and they're injecting a ton of money into this. So suddenly pace of play doesn't matter. Action still matters, though. And you still want to see, if we're going to entertain people, it's got to be an action-based sport. And it can't be guys going up and taking 6 and 7, 8 pitches in an at-bat. That's, under normal circumstances, that's a boring at-bat, right? People don't want to sit in there and watch. You and I both played softball, Patrick. You can play a 7-inning game in 1 hour because guys go up and swing the bat. I think if baseball got to the point where guys were swinging the bat more and there was more balls being put in play, fewer pitches being thrown would help the pitcher's health, the arms of the pitchers. It would help the game move along quicker. I think everybody would be happier with the outcome. And so that's something, though, that isn't necessarily transactional or monetary. So I don't know if that kind of thing doesn't get much attention anymore. That's sad.
Yeah, that's very true. And if you've got pitchers going longer into games, then you don't need these high leverage, relievers quite as much, and spending a lot of money and not getting the bang for your buck when you spend $100 million on a bullpen, which we know can be frustrating at times.
Yep.
Head on down to the DNVR bar in the corner of Colfax in York, where your membership gets you a larger beer. You get discounts on all of our swag. Your annual membership does get you a free shirt at DNVRlocker.com. And if you're not a member already, it's only 50 cents for your first month. When you're down at the bar, of course, Breckenridge Brewery is always on tap, along with their official seltzer, Good Company hard seltzer. You can pick yours up at King Soopers, Costco, Safeway, just about anywhere. Get the 15-can sampler. It's got a honeydew black cherry, a lot of really delicious flavors for you to get into. Well, speaking of getting into, Mark, let's jump a little bit into your playing career, because you had a very good one. You were professional for over a decade, and you got to see a lot of things. And I don't know if you know this, you're good with trivia and these kind of things. You may be the only pitcher or only player to call Mile High Stadium his home twice, with both the Zephyrs and both the Colorado Rockies. Do you know if this is true?
I think my former talk show host partner, Jim Tatum, was also a Rocky and a Zephyr. Darren Holmes was also a Rocky and a Zephyr. So I think there was a few of us actually that made that transition. Dante was never a Zephyr. He was a Brewer, and he played at Mile High. We did play at Mile High Stadium, a Brewers versus Zephyrs exhibition game, when the AAA game. But I think there was a handful. Greg Vaughn might be in that mix. No, Greg Vaughn was a Rocky later. He wasn't a Rocky right away. He was still a Brewer then.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, that was Coors Field days.
Yeah.
There's only the 93, 94 four guys.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So probably, perhaps, I'm leaving somebody out. There's a couple. There are probably more than one. But if you went back and looked at that Brewers, that Zephyr roster from 90 and 91, 92, Pat Listash, but he never played for the Rockies. Yeah, no, there's a few. Darren and Jim, I think, certainly are in that group.
You didn't know you're the answer to a trivia question like that. That's an important one.
I'm going to answer some trivia questions I'm not that excited about, but
well,
Manny put on Twitter the other day. When
I didn't see that one.
Frank Thomas's first major league hit came off me as a triple off the fence, and it should have been caught, as I will maintain till the day I die. And I've told Frank that too. But it was just, sometimes when your answer to a trivia question, it's not always putting you in the best light.
That's true. Well, two things. One, Frank Thomas was safe, clearly, at third base, whereas Manny, I think he was out on that throw from Ellis Burks.
Ellis will tell you that. Ellis knows. Yeah. Ellis already talked about it.
If you get that reference, then you're enjoying this episode.
Then you're listening to our podcast.
Two worlds joining. Exactly. Mm-hmm. And two, I think you were doing a little rope-a-dope. You're thinking of the long game. You're like, look, here's this young buck. He's going to have a long career. I'm going to tire him out here from the get-go, make him leg out this triple, and then let's see what happens his next 10 at-bats against me.
I had pretty good success against that White Sox team, if I remember. I don't remember how that game turned out, but I had decent success against that White Sox team. But Frank Thomas was an unknown when he came up. And so our coaches, for whatever reason, decided, we didn't have all these analytic scouting reports they have now. Coaches decided they were going to bunch the outfielders. They're going to play them in the gaps. So Rob Deere, our right fielder, had to run like a half mile to get to the ball that he normally would catch. So, yeah, it happens. It's part of history now.
Rob Deere, the Joey Gallo of the 80s.
Rob Deere, way ahead of his time. He'd fit in really nicely in baseball today.
He would.
With all the swing for the fence.
So, again, born in Denver, first guy from Colorado to actually play on the Rockies. But I think people might be interested to know that you played Division I baseball at Colorado State University. You played in Fort Collins because right now there isn't any Division I baseball in Fort Collins or in Boulder at CU.
Dropped baseball at CSU in 1992. Tried to drop it in 1982 when I was still playing, and were able to muster the funds to keep it going and finish that season. And then I think they had some parental contributions. I honestly can't think of another situation where private funding sustained a college program, a Division I program like that. I mean, we saw right before the COVID year when Boise State had brought back baseball for the first time. And then when COVID hit, they dropped it. And I was coaching some Boise State kids in the summer that year, and they said, well, they're going to bring it back. And it just doesn't ever work out because it's not sustainable long term. At some way at CSU, it kept it going for 10 more years, which is pretty remarkable in face of what they were fighting with Title IX and all that. So it's a hole. It's definitely a hole at Fort Collins. It's something that I wish they would try to address. They've got other things they have to deal with first, paying off facilities like a new stadium. But at some point, with Wyoming not having baseball, that makes it tough as a travel partner, although UNC might be able to slip in there and fit that bill at some point too. So there's ways to make it happen. I just don't think the motivation is there right now to bring it back.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, if we'll ever see it. And so, yeah, we probably have a good 10 years until we get something like that. I mean, it still exists as club ball, but it's not
very successful club ball, very successful club program. In fact, I asked, Tom McMillan is. Tom McMillan played in the NBA, was a congressman. Had him on a podcast yesterday and asked him about the club sports becoming more prevalent than Olympic sports at the college level. And he said he's fearful that could happen. And he thinks that's one of the reasons our Olympic program, especially in the winter side, is slipping because we're not putting emphasis on the non-revenue sports in colleges anymore. And that was not a fun thing to hear, but he's probably accurate.
Yeah, you were selected 69th overall in the third round. 28 guys taken before you that never made it to the majors. So
a couple with the Astros too.
That's right. Yeah. People just, I don't know if they know how hard it is, that path. I mean, again, you teach, you're a coach of a high school club there, Prospect Ridge Academy in Broomfield. And we'll get to that later, but I'm sure you tell your players that, look, there's a small fraction of players in high school that even get to play baseball in college, let alone Division I. And then a fraction of that get drafted. And a fraction of that even make it to the majors. It's grueling.
It's a tough road, and you have to have some good fortunate things happen to you. In my case, I got much taller. My senior year in high school, I grew a lot, and that matters to a pitcher. It really does. I mean, there's a few Pedro Martinez's out there, but for the most part, pitchers, because of leverage, you have to be tall. You have to be able to throw the ball downhill. And so that helped. I got some great coaching from a legendary man named Bus Campbell that a lot of people have heard of, not as many of us know anymore, but without Bus, I would never gotten anywhere near professional baseball. And CSU obviously offered me the opportunity to perform at Division I level. So you need some breaks along the way. I tell my kids, if you're good nowadays, good enough to play in college and later on good enough to play in the pros, they'll find you. Somebody will find you. So you just go about your business, control what you can control, become the best player you can be, and see what happens. But go as far as you can go. Unfortunately, I've had some kids that it didn't matter that much to them, and that's okay too. That I think if they had put a little bit more work into it, could have performed at the college level. And who knows after that. But you've got to have it inside and outside to want to do it. You've got to have it inside you, and you've got to have the physical skills on the outside to make it happen. I'll tell you, I'm excited. I'm going to put the jinx on right now. I'm excited. My shortstop this year is going to be David Bodie's nephew. Bob Bodie's grandson. Bob's going to be on my coaching staff. The high school people around here know Bob Bodie. He's been around forever and ever and coached state championship teams in the Hall of Fame. Bob's going to be on my coaching staff, and Zeke, his grandson's going to be my shortstop. And I can tell you right now, Zeke's a ninth grader. Zeke's going to play in the big leagues. He is really, really talented right now. He needs to get bigger and stronger. Mother Nature will take care of a lot of that, but this kid has big leaguer written all over him.
And hopefully by the time he's ready for the majors, there's actual games going on.
The lockout's over. Yeah, we hope so.
Yeah, probably. I'm feeling good about that.
Yeah, I do. I would make that bet.
I'd put some money on that.
Yeah.
So again, you get drafted, come up with the Astros. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you. I think you told it once before, a couple of years ago on our draft show, some of your favorite either Mike Scott or Nolan Ryan stories, because those guys are just otherworldly.
Well, Nolan obviously is from Krypton, and so you can't compare him to mortals. I saw a video of him the other day, 65 years old, throwing 80, 90 mile an hour first pitch, ceremonial first pitch.
Yeah.
It's obscene. And I remember following him around in the weight room trying to do what he did. and he's, I don't know, 15 years older than I am, or 12 years older than I am. And I couldn't come close to doing what he could do in the weight room, from grip strength to whatever he weights. I mean, the man, no one's ever worked harder than that man. And that's why the longevity was there. And that's why the career numbers were there. But it's a combination of God-given talent and just unbelievable work ethic. Mike Scott, on the other hand, Scotty didn't have much of a work ethic, to be honest with you. Scotty's idea of a workout was 18 holes of golf. But again, talent meets opportunity. Roger Craig taught him a split finger fastball. He had the right delivery. He was right over the top with his delivery. So it worked for him, and he was a master. And it was just so much fun to watch those two guys pitch every other day and be part of that rotation for a brief time. The other guys in the rotation were, Joe Niekro for a short time, Bob Nepper, who I still see from time to time is around the region, and Jim DeShays. So, I mean, we were pretty good. We were a pretty good baseball team. That's why we won the division in '86.
And DeShays, I think he was on the Boulder Collegians too for a little bit. We'll talk about your connection with that.
I didn't know. I have to give him, if that's the case, I'm calling. He's gonna have to make a donation because I didn't know that.
He's on the email that I sent you.
Is he? Okay. Well, then that's it. He's
or so guys.
He's in. I'll have to call him. He's in.
He's in. He's a lock.
He's making a lot of money right now. He can handle it. He can make a donation.
Yeah, love that. Yeah, that's going to be exciting to. I'm curious, where's your fastball sitting at these days?
It's sitting on the shelf over here somewhere. No, I'm not going to try. I walked away with my arm intact. One thing I'm really proud of in my career: 4 years of college, 12 years of pro ball, no surgeries. Never had a surgery. Never had a cortisone shot. Had good training, good teaching from Buzz Campbell, good medical attention from chiropractors I saw and stuff like that, and stayed healthy. And I want to keep it that way. So I don't even throw batting practice now.
No. Yeah. Okay.
Nope. Don't even throw batting practice. I'm healthy. Right. I can brush my teeth. I can brush my hair. I can use my right arm like I'm supposed to use it. So I'm not changing that.
If you can lift it over your head, yeah, you did it right. Yeah.
It's all good. It's all good.
For anyone that doesn't know, yeah, Bus Campbell is huge in Colorado baseball. I worked with Roy Halladay too.
Probably Bus is probably, I'm not sure this to be true, but at the time he got elected in 1987, and that took a lot of us making a really concerted effort to push this through. I think he was the only guy who'd never been a head coach who was in the sport, elected to the Colorado Sports Hall of Fame. Always an assistant coach with the Collegians at the high school level, wherever he was, UNC for a short time, CSU for a brief time, University of Iowa, never the head coach. But he was that important that once we pushed people to see this long list of more than 100 guys that he'd coached to make it to the big leagues, and some of them, obviously, Roy Halladay ended up in the Hall of Fame, there's no question his impact. I mean, at Bus's funeral, I sat with Roy at Bus's funeral. We both spoke, and I read a letter from Jamie Moyer. People know the Jamie Moyer story. Pitched until he was 50 years old or whatever it was. He was done 18 years before that when Digger Phelps, who was a friend of the coach, he's Jamie's father-in-law. He was a friend of the coach at Iowa, where Bus was working at Iowa. They got together and they said, so Jamie came out here and worked out with us in one off season and pitched 18 more years after Bus Campbell worked him over. And and Jamie knew that and has never waned from that. And I think you can find a lot of guys who will look at that guy and say, he's the reason I got where I got.
That's amazing. Yeah, Moyer's career really didn't start until he was in his early 30s. Kind of the typical left-hander where you go out late bloomer. It takes a while to figure it out. And I wasn't aware of that Bus was integral.
Bus was the guy that resurrected Jamie Moyer's career.
Yeah, integral in getting some good sleep has got to be the dissolvable gummies from Ripple. It's clinically proven to hit 2 times faster than the leading gummies. There's also Ripple Quick Sticks, the most convenient way to get the fastest THC. Just pour it on your tongue if you need to. Ripple products come with a variety of doses for whatever experience you're looking for. There's absolutely no sketchy science here. Ripple's speed and absorption were studied by Colorado State University. Getting a lot of shout outs here today up there in Fort Collins. Yeah. In a randomized placebo-controlled trial with real people. And yes, the results were published in a peer-reviewed journal. So where can you get Ripple? Look for it at Lightshade, Colorado's premier dispensary with 10, soon to be 11 convenient Denver Metro and Aurora locations. They've got something for everyone from the casual consumer to the connoisseur. Lightshade has a premium selection of cannabis concentrates, top shelf flower, edibles, tinctures, accessories, and more. Podcast listeners can get 25% off non-sale items with code DNVR. Shop online at lightshade.com for pickup or visit a Lightshade location near you. Folks over at Ball, they're now hiring for $27 an hour at their manufacturing plant in Goldman. Those production technician jobs are fantastic. There's skills growth built into it. You can eventually become a maintainer, work your way up in the company. You get comprehensive insurance, active the day of hire, 401k for retirement, stock purchase ownership program, and even potential for an annual bonus. All you got to do is text Golden to 77222 and you'll get linked to open positions, or go directly to jobs.ball.com and search for Golden. So Mark, a couple weekends ago, the Friends of Baseball event up in Greeley, UNC, got to see those ball players there, was fantastic. Spoke with Eric Davis, Tom Runnels, and they talked about how great the crowds would be at Mile High Stadium before it was Major League Baseball. We're just talking AAA, which, again, if that's the best that you've got, that's great. But for a AAA ball game in Denver in the late 80s, 70, 80,000 people were showing up.
There were some days there that was just astonishing. And then the players, when I got here to play for the Zephyrs, I grew up going to Denver Bears games and Denver Zephyrs games. I worked in the parking lot with the orange jumpsuit, and I'd go watch batting practice and collect foul balls, and I'd practice with those. So I kind of knew what we're in for. And when I arrived here in 1990 with the Zephyrs, to play for the Zephyrs, actually, no, I take it back. 80 would have been 88 with the Zephyrs. The guys who weren't from around here were astonished. I kept trying to tell them, this is what to expect. This is what we're going to get here, especially on promotional nights. It was magical. And it always surprised me. It took Major League Baseball that long to figure it out, because the stadium was not a big league stadium, as we know. But the fact that you could put 75,000 people in there to watch a baseball game, and you could experience some dramatic moments. I mean, Joey Meyer's legendary home run, I was in the dugout when he hit that ball into the upper deck. You just saw things there that were just big league all the way. And you had a AAA team playing in a big league environment, and it was just a matter of time before that translated to the big leagues. Yeah,
that's wonderful. Denver's a big league town long before, as you said, they got the Rockies. Now, Mark, I think you're a bit of a jokester, and I'm going to put you on the spot here. I think you are. I think you're a bit of a jokester, because one of your baseball cards with the Denver Zephyrs, I'll put this up, and most people are going to look at it and go, what's funny? The mustache? No, the mustache looks good. That was very much of the time. I'm looking at the sleeves. Everything looks totally normal in this, but it's not. Mark, what are you doing here in this picture?
I wasn't the only one. Go back and look at the whole set. This was 1988, or maybe it was 1987, but I was not. I had a pulled attitude muscle at that point, and I was unhappy that I had been sent down to AAA. And so when they ask you to take a AAA baseball card, you're like, I don't want to do this. And so I traded gloves with one of the left-handed pitchers on the team, and I'm a lefty and he's a righty. In fact, this same set has a picture of Billy Bates, who people might not remember, that, not the football player from Dallas, the baseball player. Ended up, if you remember the 1990 World Series, he was a key part of Cincinnati beating the Dodgers beating the A's, in that World Series. With Rob Dibble and Randy Myers and those guys. And Billy's not just Billy was a second baseman. In his picture, he's not just a left-handed pitcher. He's doing a pickoff move to first. So we all didn't take this too seriously that day at Mile High Stadium, and just kind of showing our displeasure with the whole thing. So it was more of a joke. It was more of a bad attitude at the time.
Well, it's fun. It's subtle enough. Look, it's no Billy Ripken. It's not. We don't have a Billy Ripken situation here. Right. It's good. And I would leave it at that, Mark. But you know what? That wasn't the only time you pulled this. You go to Las Vegas, and even bigger smile and a smirk on your face with the old left-handed hitter.
And very much unhappy that I wasn't a Padre. I thought I'd made the team out of spring training and got sent down, and very unhappy about that. So resurrected the idea.
But I respect it, because you not only did you double down, you tripled down, and here's
Knudson
with a bat.
That was legit, though. I was ready to hit that day. We were all ready to hit that day with the glasses and the whole bit. I played for Jim Riggleman that year in Vegas. He was he just got a job, I saw the other day on Twitter, in some independent league. But one of the best guys I was ever around. Great manager.
Yeah, he's going to be managing the Billings Mustangs, part of the Pioneer League, and so you'll have a chance to bump into him.
I will try to. Well, we got 3 options here. We got Colorado Springs, Windsor, and Grand Junction now.
That's right. Northern Colorado Owls are coming up. We'll see. They're building the stadium now, so I'm excited.
They promised me. I've been told it'll be ready for the season, late May. It'll be ready to go. In fact, I was invited to bring my high school team there to play next spring, not this spring. So that'll be fun.
That's exciting. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So as you mentioned, playing in Las Vegas, what is that like as a market? Is that a baseball town, or is that just a very unique thing back, again, this is a while ago, of course, where Las Vegas wasn't a major league city, but still, did you get a good sense like, this is a decent little baseball town?
It was hot. Oh, it was hot. It was the hottest place I've ever been in the summertime. The stadium, Cashman Field, was sunk down. It was surrounded by parking lot. It was sunk down. So the heat just poured in there. I mean, it couldn't even run in the afternoon to get ready for the game. It was just too hot. But no, it was a fun place to be. Most people, and I'm sure you've been there plenty of times, Patrick, it's a place you want to be for 3 or 4 days, and then you've had enough time to leave. And I think that was our prevailing thought as players. We love having the homestand, but first few days you'd go to a comedy club or you'd go to a casino or something. And that's last half of the homestand, you're tired. You just want to stay home. And you come back from a road trip. Now you're going back and, playing the slot machines in the airport or the grocery store or whatever. I never at the time thought it would be a big league city, but it's obviously way bigger than it was. They didn't have arenas or anything then. I could see the day where Major League Baseball puts a team there. Now you've got a football team there. Why not build a retractable? You'd have to have a dome stadium. It's just too hot in the summer. But it's forward-thinking place. I mean, I wrote about this a couple of times. When the Chargers left San Diego, was because the people of San Diego didn't want to approve a tax to build a stadium on tourists. The tax wasn't going to be on the people of San Diego. It was going to be it was a hotel, a tourism tax. They wouldn't have to pay it. And they lost their football team because they didn't want to do that. The same tax is what passed in Las Vegas. And they built that gorgeous new facility they have there. And I can see them continue to do that. I wouldn't be shocked if there's a major league team in Vegas someday.
Yeah. The voters here in Denver put a tax on themselves in order to fund the Rockies.
And built 2 stadiums for the price of 1. That's how successful it was. And they could do that again.
Yeah.
We might need a new football stadium pretty soon, right? That's what they're saying.
Yeah. I mean, this one's only, this one's 20 years old. So old.
Get rid of it, man.
It's gross. Yeah. Did you ever get any interesting celebrities coming out throwing out the first pitch, like Don Rickles in Vegas?
No, well,
crazy like that?
I remember one time Raleigh Massimino was the coach at UNLV, and he came out and threw out the first pitch one day. I can't remember if we had any didn't have any big time celebrities. It was too hot. Anyone come out and go through that? I mean, I had fun in Las Vegas at the ballpark even. I mean, but I don't remember any celebrities coming out to throw. I don't know if they came to games, but they didn't venture out on the field. But that's a good idea. They probably have done that in the past. Didn't do it that year.
They'll definitely make that work in the next iteration.
You would think so.
I think that's probably the favorite because you want to put maybe one more team on the West Coast, one on the East. Nashville seems to be the favorite.
Yeah.
Las Vegas in the West. Those are kind of the favorites at this
Makes
point.
sense.
That makes sense. Definitely does. Now, during your career, did you have a favorite catcher that you threw to? And I bring that up because, again, every Monday, the Park Adjusted Rockies podcast comes out with you and Manny, and just recently had Tracy Ringlesby on talking about the history of catchers and, in Colorado. And as much as it's always been this thing of, they've never produced an all-star catcher.
Nope.
Is a lot of the expansion teams really have struggled to. I think Mike DeFelice is the only one from the expansion teams of the last 4 for the Rays. And so, maybe it's not as bad as you think, but did you have what makes for a good catcher? I really is what I should say.
Well, I brought up Charlie O'Brien during the podcast. I worked with Charlie before he became Greg Maddox's catcher later on. And what makes a great catcher is somebody who's defensive minded first. His offense is okay. He's not going to worry too much about it. He's going to do what he can do with the bat, but he really wants to work with the pitching staff and really make the best of that. And Charlie just had such soft hands and such a good way of moving behind the plate that he made balls look like strikes. And that obviously was huge. He obviously could throw. He was just a really, really good catcher. And that's why Greg Maddox decided a few years later that this had to be his catcher as well. But again, if you get to that level, I mean, B.J. Soroff was our number 1 catcher that year. And B.J. was a dynamic offensive player and had been a converted shortstop. Had played shortstop at North Carolina, converted to play catcher. Wasn't his favorite thing to do. He was good at it. Obviously, you don't catch in the big leagues if you're not really good at it. But you could tell he during batting practice, he's out taking ground balls at short and stuff like that. And Charlie's hanging out with the pitchers in the outfield. So I think it starts with a mindset, and you've got to have a mindset where you're going to take a beating. It is, and I'll argue with anybody who wants to argue with me, the toughest position in all of sports, period. And I don't want to hear from the goaltenders and hockey goaltenders because they don't have to score points. They don't have to counsel their pitcher and talk him off a ledge in a bases loaded situation. They don't have to be a pitching coach and do all those types of things. So it's the toughest position in all of sports, and my hat's off to guys who can do it well. Charlie was the best one I ever threw to.
Yeah, and and even with the the plays at the plate with the Buster Posey rules there.
Mm-hmm.
It's still the hardest position.
Try catching a throw from a one-hop throw from an outfielder with a guy bearing down on you. Your eyes got to go two different directions at the same time. It's still very difficult to do.
It really is.
You're not going to get plowed anymore like Mike Sosa used to get, but you're still going to have to make the play.
Do you know if Charlie gets any royalties for those hockey mask helmets? Because people might not know. I love those kind of little piece of trivia, right? When he was up in Toronto, I think it was 96. Mm-hmm. He goes to a hockey game and goes, you know what, that mask, I could wear that as a catcher. And he was the first one to do that as an older guy too.
Yeah, he was.
This young swagger. He was a little bit, he was in his late 30s at that point. And
if there's royalties to be got, he got them. I can promise you that. But I don't know. I know, as far as I know, he still is back in Oklahoma. There's a farmer in Oklahoma. That's what he always wanted to do. So I don't know. But like I said, if there was a royalty to be got, he got it. I promise. Because he should have.
You've had some good shows, again, on the Park Adjusted Rockies podcast with C. Trent Rosecrans, former president of the BBWA, talking all things about Baseball Hall of Fame. I know it seems like it was like a month ago, but hey, there's not a lot of other things going on right now, so we can continue to talk about this.
You could tell Manny about that. Manny's bouncing off the walls right now, not able to talk about anything.
Yeah. Well, once we got a chance to talk to Eric Davis, he's like, okay, now I've got something. He was happy about that. Yep. That's his guy too, so I was really happy for him. But you had C. Trent on, which was great. I got to ask, do you feel like your generation of ball players are underrepresented in the Baseball Hall of Fame?
I don't know about my generation. I just think the Hall of Fame is underrepresented to be across the board. I think there's a lot of guys. Again, I view it like I think Jason Stark said it. You can either have a cathedral or you can have a museum. The other sports have a museum. I don't think there's one. Who can tell me that Dikembe Mutombo was a Hall of Fame basketball player? Hall of Fame humanitarian after his playing career? Absolutely. Right? Good. He averaged 9 points and 10 rebounds a game. And he's in the Hall of Fame. Basketball, obviously the bar is not so high. I think the bar is too high in baseball. I really do. I think there's a lot of guys that you can't tell the story of the game in their era without them, like Dale Murphy. I know his numbers don't stack up, and Manny will argue with me on this because Manny wants to make it numbers based. But I just think there's not enough guys in there because when you leave out a Dale Murphy, who was he was the dominant player of the 1980s. He was the guy. Yeah. And yet he didn't play long enough. And they made an exception for Kirby Puckett, American League, his career shortened by injuries. So if you're going to make that Gale Sayers, Kirby Puckett kind of exception, look at a guy like Dale Murphy and say, this guy was spectacular for a short amount of time, but he was still spectacular, and he still should be in the Hall of Fame. And so I don't know that I limit it to my generation, but certainly Billy Wagner, Kenny Lofton, as distasteful as it might be, Kurt Schilling, a lot of these guys belong in the Hall of Fame. Or obviously, I put Bonds and Clemens and those guys in without even batting an eye. I don't think. I guess I'm a little bit more discerning than a lot of people. I know Sammy Sosa was integral to what you talked about earlier about the renaissance of baseball under Bud Selig in the late 90s. But I believe the Sammy Sosa I played against was a skinny guy who was a singles hitter. I believe, and I have no proof of this. I'm not casting aspersions. I'm just saying I believe performance-enhancing substances made him a home run hitter. That's not true about Barry Bonds. That's not true about Mark McGwire. Mark McGwire was a raw rookie at 49 home runs. Skinny, tall rookie for the A's, big long swing at 49 home runs. Now, does Mark's career measure up to can you tell the story of baseball without Roger Maris? Why isn't he in the Hall of Fame? I just think our standards are a little bit too high, maybe too numbers driven in some respects. But the new analytics do tell you, and Manny's been helpful with me learning this stuff, how good a guy like Larry Walker was, even though he didn't reach those milestones at 3,000 hits or 500 home runs. How good he really was in comparison with his peers. I think if you use that on all these guys, there'd be a lot more guys in the Hall. When I was there, I was shocked. The first time I walked in there, I was shocked by how few plaques there are in there. They have room for 4 times as many plaques as they have in that place. It's big empty. And I think the game's doing itself a disservice by not honoring those guys. And not just, maybe honoring is not the right word, recognizing those guys. Because if you want to tell the story of Pete Rose betting on baseball as a manager, tell it. It's part of the history of the game. It should be in the museum. Museums aren't all nice things, right? We have museums that depict some of the bad things that have happened to.
Yeah, Dale Murphy, back-to-back MVPs. Yeah. He's one of only 11 guys to do it. Yeah. And pretty much everybody on that list is a Hall of Famer, other than Roger Maris, who's another.
And think about this about the NBA or basketball in general. Every eligible former MVP is in the Hall of Fame. So Nikola Jokic is already in, and we're happy to have him. He's having a great year, and he's having a magnificent career. But he's already in. Think about that. Basically
Yeah.
already in the Hall of Fame. And Dale Murphy wins it twice and can't get in. I just think that's a standard baseball shouldn't be holding itself to.
And Rob Manfred's in too, right? You got every commissioner's in. Unfortunately, don't kill the messenger. But it's I don't get too bent out of shape with guys like Harold Baines or Bill Mazeroski, where they
the low bars,
they wouldn't be maybe in my Hall of Fame. But you know what? If you had other players of their ilk, and you say, well, maybe Mattingly wasn't a definitive Hall of Famer, but he was really close, put him in. Keith Hernandez, maybe not put him in. Once you start doing that, you'll fill in those gaps, and you know what? Then it'll make a lot more sense.
Right. Mattingly's the best hitter I ever faced, and his career was cut short by an injury. That's the same thing that happened to Kirby Puckett.
Yeah. Right?
So why is Don not there? I mean, to me, Wade Boggs got in the Hall of Fame and deserved it with his performances. But I played against both of them in their primes, and there was no comparison between the two. Mattingly was a far better hitter, a far more feared hitter by every pitcher that walked up on the mound. Boggs, you're afraid, oh man, if I don't make the perfect pitch, he's going to hit a little flare somewhere. He's going to slap one off the Green Monster. He's going to do something. And he did it magnificently. He helped his team win games. And he belongs in the Hall of Fame. But he wasn't Don Mattingly. And Don Mattingly couldn't play because of his back. Like Larry Bird couldn't play longer because of his back. And we're punishing Don Mattingly. That's not right.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I
still maintain, Patrick. I wrote about this. We don't need to have the baseball writers, and maybe at some point you'll be one of those. They shouldn't be right. Trent told us this, Rosecrans. The Athletic's been purchased by the New York Times, which does not allow its writers to vote because of the journalistic standard that you and I both understand. You report the news, you don't make the news. I think that we've got to get to the point where the baseball writers are not making this selection anymore, that we have a selection committee. Tracy's on the committee to do the veterans. There needs to be a committee, a cross-section of former players, former managers, former umpires, former executives, former media members. I mean, Vin Scully right now should be voting on the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Right? Then we'd get a Hall of Fame that was really, really, truly reflective of the history of the game, I think.
And there's no real perfect answer, because even under your scenario, which I agree with, I'd be fine with that. There's going to be players who get in because of who is on that panel. Like again, Harold Baines. We saw how
they do.
You know what? They're still going to get a lot more right than wrong.
Yeah, and what they do though, and when they're discussing a particular player, and there's somebody has a connection to him, that person leaves the room, just like the College Football Playoff Committee. That person leaves the room. That's how they do it in the Veterans Committee stuff. I don't know. LaRussa got Harold Baines in the Hall of Fame. There's no question about that. And I played against Harold Baines a number of years. I never once, when he walked to the plate, thought I was facing a Hall of Famer. Never considered. Never crossed my mind. I thought that about George Brett. Thought that about Kirby Puckett. Thought that about Don Mattingly. Never thought it once about Harold Baines. I'm happy for him. And he was shocked as anybody that he got in. But we will eliminate the bias when we have a bigger group of selectors, and you can take a guy out like that who has a connection like LaRussa had with Baines, or someone who puts him forward for nomination, has to leave the room while everybody else talks about him, something like that. They can figure out a way to make it work correctly.
Yeah. Did you ever get that sense about a guy like Joe Carter? Because I know he had pretty good numbers against you. Is he a guy you go, this or at least could be a Hall of Famer, if not definitely a Hall of Fame guy?
Probably not. I wouldn't put Joe in that category.
Right.
Joe was a great player and a great hitter. Played against him in college when he was at Wichita State. He and Charlie O'Brien were teammates at Wichita State. And he was a fantastic baseball player. But I don't know that I would ever look at Joe and say he was a Hall of Famer. He's a World Series hero. That's pretty darn good. But, I mean, there's guys that, and again, Manny brings up Kenny Lofton all the time. Kenny Lofton's career numbers say he should be in the Hall of Fame. And for whatever reason, he fell off on the first ballot. So if that happens to a Kenny Lofton, then a guy like Joe Carter's got no shot, unfortunately.
Yeah, inexplicable. Joe Carter, also Boulder Collegian.
I played against him there too. Trust me.
Tony Gwynn
batted third. Tony Gwynn was batting third. Yeah. Joe Carter was batting fourth. That was quite a team.
That would be a good segue to talk about the Boulder Collegians. But I still got one more question, because sure. I know you've again talked about this in the Park Adjusted Rockies podcast. Rockies Team Hall of Fame. Yeah. They need to have it. Yeah. Would you put your former, well, he wasn't your manager. No, he was your manager in 93, and he was your coach in Milwaukee, Don Baylor. Do you think he needs to be in that first class?
Charter member, absolutely. Yeah. You'll never meet, and I mentioned Jim Riggleman, and I put Don in that same category, one of the best people I was ever around. And just a man's man, knew how to play the game, knew how to respect his opponents, knew how to, nobody got hit by a pitch more by the time when he retired. Nobody had been hit by a pitch more than Don Baylor. He charged him out once against John Denny. And he told me the reason he did that was because John Denny was throwing at his head. Don would take one off the bicep and laugh and run to first. Then he'd take out the second baseman to show him not to do this. So second baseman's going up to the pitcher and saying, knock that off. So that's the way the game was policed back then. But Don was ultimate professional, great hitting coach, great. I don't know that I didn't get enough time with him as a manager. He definitely had changed as a manager. He definitely got more uptight and felt, you could tell he's feeling the pressure when first year of the Rockies, because he was bound to determine we wouldn't lose 100 games, and we didn't. But at Milwaukee, when he was the hitting coach in Milwaukee, he was just the guy that everybody wanted to hang around with, everybody wanted to be around, learn from, listen to. He'd definitely be in the first class, no question.
Would you want his number 28 retired as well?
Yes. I think that's something the Rockies don't do enough of. It took him a long time to get Larry Walker's number retired, which I thought was puzzling. But yeah, I don't think anybody should wear Don Baylor's number ever again. You could make a case for Andres Galarraga. You could make a case for a lot of. Listen, we talk about Harold Baines. Harold Baines was traded from the White Sox, I believe, to the Rangers. Yeah, for the Rangers to Sammy Sosa. At some point, I don't remember the year. 6 weeks later, while he was still playing for the Rangers, the White Sox retired his number.
Yeah.
Did you know that? They retired him. He was still an active player, and he played more. And then he came back and played for the team again, for the White Sox again, Harold Baines did. So that's why I say Nolan Arenado's number should be retired by the Rockies right now. Now, why not?
Baines has he's got some photographs on some people for sure.
Something happened.
And it's number 25 for Don Baylor. I misspoke. Right. I'm thinking of Nolan Arenado already.
28 Nolan, yeah.
That's right. 25 for Don Baylor. And it's interesting too, like you said, it took so long to get Larry Walker's number retired, and it was really only done once it was already kind of known he's probably going to get in. And that, I think that hurt him, just like it's hurt Lou Whitaker, who the Tigers are now finally retiring his number 1 in Detroit.
Crazy. You don't know. There's behind the scenes things that go on. That,
sure.
I don't know that Larry Walker left here in the best of ways with the Rockies. He was frustrated. The team wasn't winning. And Larry had some personal growth to do at that point. I'm glad he got to go to St. Louis and have the success he had in St. Louis. I think it was a cherry on top of a great Hall of Fame career. But I think there was must have been some lingering bad feelings here. That's all I can figure, because there's no reason his number wasn't retired a long time ago.
When you go back and look at your 1993 Topps card, is it great to know that the hat in the jersey has stayed the same? It's kind of timeless, no?
Well, I think they did that on purpose. If I'm not mistaken, they did that because they wanted to be the Yankees, who don't change things. And I do think that's good. I hate the black vests. I think those are gross. And I hate the purple shirts too. The purple ones look like Barney the dinosaur. I'm not a fan of either of those. They look softball to me. But that's a classic look, right? That pinstripe Rockies. And they've tweaked it, upgraded a little bit, which you can do. But I don't think they should ever mess with that. That's something to maybe, again, tweak, twist around once in a while, but always go back to that. That's the foundation.
Yeah, it's kind of gotten to the part now where, you'd see teams do all these rebrandings, and maybe 5-10 years ago, you would have.
The Diamondbacks change colors every other year, don't they?
Pretty much. Yeah. Actually, I just got a message here on my phone on Twitter. I think they just changed their logo again. Yeah, so, what are you going to do? But now it's gotten to the point where you go, now you almost can't change it. You just have to have fun and do those little tweaks. Alternates. That's it. Speaking of having fun, you have a lot of fun on the coaching side. I mean, between the Boulder Collegians, the general manager, and Prospect Ridge Academy, I mean, go wild on either of those. I want to hear about this trip you got coming up, because you're going to be in Arizona. Mark Knudson's going to be playing.
Well, we're going to scrap. We're going to practice. We don't get to play. We have our full schedule of games here, but look outside right now. I don't know that we might get Remember last March, we didn't have high school baseball last March because of COVID, but we had a kind of a club season in place of that to get ready for the regular season, which started at the end of April. We played once all last March because of the snow. One game. And I don't know, you can count on playing games in March in Colorado before spring break. So we decided, Mark Johnson, the legendary coach at Cherry Creek, told me, he said, listen, just take your team. What I do, take my team down to Arizona. It's a family trip for the families. They pay their own way. They go down there. But the team gets together and practices. And then in the afternoon, go to some games. So we're going to try that this year and see if we can make that work, because historically, we've come back in my tenure at PRA, we've come back from spring break flat as a board, not out of shape, but out of baseball shape, just not clicking, and lost some games we should absolutely win. And we play in a meat grinder of a league, so we can't afford to do that. So we're going to have some fun in Arizona and see if we can't get some good practices in down there. Probably the first time we'll see grass green grass.
Yeah.
Before we have, I want to say, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 6 games, including a game at Coors Field, scheduled before that trip. I'm not confident we'll get any of them played, but we'll hope. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed, and fingers crossed that you'll get to actually see some spring training games when you're down there as well.
Again, I'll go back to what we talked about at the beginning. I think by the third week in March, they'll be playing baseball.
I think so too. I think so too. And yeah, Boulder Collegians last year. You guys went to Alaska, didn't you?
We did. We went to Fairbanks and played 6 games against the Gold Panthers, who we walked in there with jet lag and whooped them on the first night. We're thinking we're pretty good, and we got beat 5 in a row. But that's just, I mean, Tony Rucco, the manager, he and I go back to our high school days together. He was my catcher in high school. And he's a really, really, really good manager. And he's done a great job of recruiting. The Mile High Collegiate Baseball League, run by Jason Stark, is a very good league. Not up to, not Cape Cod or the Northwoods or any of those types of things, but it's a good, solid league of college players. We ran a roughshod through that league last year, lost twice all year in the league. And so we were considering the short time frame we had to put the team together, things went really, really well. I went to Alaska and then ended up going to the national tournament in Kansas and didn't do real well there, but certainly whetted our appetite for better things to come.
Yeah, Jason Hirsch does an amazing job with that league. Did you get to play in the new Wichita Stadium?
No, we didn't make it. Last year because of COVID, they split it up. We started in Hutchinson, so we played at Hutch. And you had to win, or I don't think you had to win your bracket, but you had to advance to the Final 8 or something before everybody went to Wichita to play. Because they've got the brand new facility there, and I think the Padres team, the Padres are there. We're still using it during that first week of the tournament. So if we make it to week 2, we get to go over to Wichita.
Yeah, a lot of great college baseball in the summertime. Yeah, absolutely. For sure. And Denver Browns, are doing things. They get people I don't think realize how great of a baseball culture there is.
The Denver Browns are our team of guys adults, yeah. And Matt Reblinger does a nice job keeping that together and making that thing roll every year. And we play them to start the season. It's more or less an exhibition game, but they're feisty. They play hard, and those guys really like to play. And what's cool about it, after the game last year at Scott Carpenter, I walked out to my truck, and they were all sitting in the back of a couple different trucks drinking beers after the game. Hang out, just like the old days, right? Just like it's old school, right? Everybody hanging out together, having a couple beers after the games. And that was a lot of fun. That's a good outfit. And, the NABA League is solid around here. A lot of people like to play a lot of baseball. And Jason's league has grown exponentially. It's going to continue to grow. There's another league here, the Rocky Mountain Baseball League, that is also very, very good. We play a few cross-division or cross-league games with them. It's fun not to have to travel out to. When I was in college, I had to go out to Beatrice, Nebraska to play in the Jayhawk League because all we had here was the Collegians and the Grand Junction Tigers and the Pueblo Chieftains. That was it.
Arvada Dons were not around at that point?
If they were, they weren't at that level. And the Jayhawk League was Roger Clemens was in the Jayhawk League with me that year. Or I should say I was with him in the Jayhawk League back then. But you had to get good competition, you had to go somewhere else. You don't have to do that now. Yeah,
they have a lot of great baseball in Colorado. You have so many irons in the fire.
I do.
And actually, I do want to mention too, Scott Carpenter Park is in BoulderCollegians.com, I think is the website too. Mm-hmm. So once that season gets going, it's pretty much right after Memorial Day.
Memorial Day. Yeah. Right now, Boulder High is playing it. I was told, I haven't been up there, but I was told they're going to laser grade the field before the season starts for Boulder High, and the CU club team, University of Colorado club team, will be playing on it. So it gets a lot of attention. It's a historic venue. When I pitched against the Collegians when I was in college, I played for a team, CSU and UNC guys put together up in Greeley, and we'd go down and play the Collegians, and they'd beat our brains in. But Joe Carter was their cleanup hitter. Bobby Meacham was their leadoff hitter. Tony Gwynn batted third. And they used to have, before they built the skate park, they had a big giant tree out there in center field. And Joe Carter hit a ball so hard off Mike Trujillo, who and people who know Mike Trujillo know he's recovering from COVID, and he's doing miraculous recovery. He looked like he was not going to make it. And he's doing well now, so we're really thankful for that. But Mike threw Joe Carter a hanging slider, and Joe hit a line drive off that tree and knocked a branch onto center field. So there's a lot of memories at Scott Carpenter, and it's a really fun place to play summer baseball.
Yeah, I'm glad it hit the tree because and the skate park wasn't there because those kids do not like they don't take very well to batting practice and home runs.
No, they don't.
They'll throw the balls back at the guys. They don't.
And they'll go turn our scoreboard off when they get a chance too.
Oh, so. I did. That's a new trick. I haven't seen that one yet.
Yeah, we've had to send players out there with aluminum bats to get them stop doing that.
Yeah, so many things you're doing, and again, this is what I hear from the grapevine here. You're kind of co-authored a book with one of your former teammates, I believe. Right?
Well,
again,
that was done
so many things.
Well, writing's obviously going to be my first passion, and that's what I do a lot of and spend a lot of my time at. But back during the COVID lockout, I was approached by I'd been approached earlier than that, my teammate Don August, who we were teammates with the Zephyrs and in Milwaukee. Don has a very unique story to tell, and he said, somebody's bugged me to write a book, and I said, okay, well, send it to me. I'll see what I can do. It's 444 pages of word vomit. And you know that, Patrick, you're a writer. A stream of consciousness, just bleh. And so I had to take this thing and kind of single out different stories and different themes. And we came up with this book called Foreign Affairs, which it talks about Don's travels in professional baseball after he was done playing in the big leagues. He had his big league career, minor leagues, U.S. Olympic team in '84, big league career. Now he's done. I retired at that point, right? I was done. Don decided he wanted to play, played 8 more seasons, 5 of them in Taiwan and 1 in Italy, a couple in Mexico. So Foreign Affairs was the natural title for the book, and it details all of Don's adventures on and off the field, including being approached by gangsters in Taiwan to throw games and thinking he was going to be killed, thrown off a building because he refused, going through hurricanes and earthquakes and surviving. There was a pitcher named Marty Clary, if anybody remembers that name, pitched for the Atlanta Braves, was a teammate of Don's in Mexico, and Don was living in the apartment below Marty. Marty's infant son fell out a window and died, and Don watched him fall past the window. So some of these stories are obviously that's a tearjerker kind of story, but there's some great stories in there about food and getting the culture, the language barriers, all those types of things, which is really, really fascinating stuff. And the good news, and I don't want to jinx it, but I think a publisher picked it up yesterday. So we finished it a while back. We've been waiting, talking to different people, but I think, Manny was telling me just to self-publish it. We'll wait. We wait a little longer, and I think a publisher came through yesterday. So hopefully we get that thing out pretty soon, and people can read those stories because they're tremendous stories.
So Manny puts out Blake Street Bombers. Larry Walker gets in the Hall of Fame. When this book comes out, I mean, you better book those rooms for Cooperstown for
Don. Well, Don pitched in Cooperstown for the Olympic team and in an exhibition game. So maybe he'll make a third trip back there for a book signing. But we're hoping that we can get him. Actually, Manny's idea, which is a great idea, is to have Don go back to Taiwan with a film crew and go back and revisit some of those locations and stuff that were done. And we're going to see if once the book's in the works, we're going to approach people about doing something like that. That'd be a lot of fun.
That's fun. But, yeah. Keep us in the loop.
I'm not going to Taiwan. I got too much going on. I'm not going to Taiwan, but Don can go. Don's coaching high school baseball and teaching in Milwaukee. So he can take some time off in the summer and go up there and go back to his old stomping grounds. And that would be a whole bunch of fun to watch, fun to read and fun to watch.
What if someone puts the offer out there for your boys to go over to play in the summer in Taiwan or something?
Alaska was an amazing trip, and I'd love to go back to Alaska, but I don't know that we want to do too much further than that. We went to Alaska. I don't know if you've been there, Patrick. Went to Alaska, no. and I didn't see darkness for a week. It was never dark.
Wow. So you're there in like late June then?
We were there in the third week of July. Okay. But it started to get dusky around 2:00 in the morning. But I'm an old guy; I'm going to bed, right? So I was never awake while it was dark for a whole week, and that was really cool. I have a picture of the marquee at the Fairbanks Airport. It says 10:59, 71 degrees, but it's 10:59 p.m. and it's sunshine. It's 10:59 p.m. It's 71 degrees in the sunshine. Pulling up to a store or McDonald's or something at midnight, it's sunny out, and they're closed. It was a really weird experience, but it was fun.
And your body's telling you it's time to go to bed, and
but
your eyes say, "Hey, I can see sunlight."
It's not dark.
That's wild. I've always thought that would be a cool one of those destination games. We got the Field of Dreams game, the London series.
Oh yeah, I've written about that. I wrote about that after we got back because honestly, the field at Fairbanks hasn't been renovated in 50 years. It's miserable. It's a terrible field, and they just don't have the money and the manpower to make it work. They'd love to. So our friend Dan Evans, who put on the Field of Dreams game, I brought it up to Dan, and we're making calls because I think that would be the perfect place for Major League Baseball to play. And Don August, I told him about it. He loved the idea too. I think anybody who's been there would be. It could be just like the Field of Dreams game, the Midnight Sun game. Play the Midnight Sun game there.
So it wouldn't translate for television. That's the only thing.
They have lights there, but they don't work. There's light poles, and you say, "Well, they haven't turned them on in decades. They don't work."
You know why? The skateboarders unplugged it.
There you go.
There we
You
go.
don't need it. No, the Midnight Sun game would be really cool to play it up there. No darkness. That would be fun.
That'd be fantastic. Mark, let them know where you can find all your stuff. I know you're on Twitter at Mark Knudson, Knudson 41.
Yep. And most of the stuff that I do, almost all the stuff I do, I send out on Twitter. The Park Adjusted Rockies podcast, which Manny and I do once a week. I have a college sports podcast called Knudson and the Commish with Carl Benson, former commissioner of the Western Athletic Conference. We do that at the end of the week. I have my Three Strikes blog on milehighsports.com, and I have my column on 1310kfk.com, and of course woodypage.com. So I got all sorts of outlets to talk about various things, because baseball by itself can get a little tedious, especially right now. And I don't know how you're doing this. I don't know how we do this with the Park Adjusted Rockies podcast, because it's just, you got to scratch and find stuff to talk about, don't you?
Yeah, sometimes you have to grovel and ask,
and have people like me on to fill time, because because you don't have any big leaguers to talk to.
That's it. No, I mean, I appreciate you giving us this time. You're probably late on some kind of deadline for one of these articles that you got to put out.
I'm all done earlier, thankfully. But
we'll attach all your articles. We'll attach a couple of your articles to this podcast description.
That. Cool.
And so drive a little more traffic, because your writing is fantastic. Always have good takes there. Appreciate you coming on. You can follow all of our Rockies content at DNVR_Rockies on Twitter. I'm at Patrick D. Lyons on Twitter. And so for Mark Knudson, I'm Patrick Lyons. This has been a lot of fun, but you know what they say about momentum? It's only as good as tomorrow's podcast. So I'll talk to you then.